Hey, Brad, can you hear us? Hey, Brad, are you able to hear us?
No, I am not. All right, now I am. Never mind.
That was
answered your question. I originally was not, but now I can.
Can you see me?
Can you hear me now?
Good evening. I now call to order the Thursday, June 25th, 2026 meeting of the City of Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, folks present. We will start with item 3, public comment. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
No, Chair, we do not.
All right, we'll move to item 4A, consideration of and action on the approval of the minutes of the June 11, 2026 meeting. Commissioners, you have the minutes in your packets and online. Any corrections?
Motion to approve.
I've got a motion to approve by Commissioner Brown. Is there a second? I've got a second from Commissioner Smith. Please vote. Looks like that passes 4-0 with one abstention. Does he have to vote?
It doesn't work because you need a quorum of members, so it doesn't pass.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So Commissioner
If
Hart
you need, I
votes
also vote
yes. So that's 5 votes. That motion passes. Thank you for the clarification. Sorry for the technical difficulty. We will go on to item 5A, consideration of and action on the Rye Hill Section 5 preliminary plat extension. Ethan Cantu, Principal Planner. Good night. Good evening, Ethan. How the heck are you? Good.
Can you hear me now? Okay, cool.
No.
Awesome. All right. So yes. So tonight I've got the preliminary plat extension for Rye Hill Section 5. Just to give a quick overview of the plat. So it's going to be 32.243 acres of single-family residential. It's got 114 lots, 4 reserves, and 5 blocks. These are going to be 60-foot wide lots, and with the corner lots being an additional 10 feet wide. Once again, it's located south of FM 2759 and east of 762, and it's located in our ETJ, and access to this section is provided via Rye Hill Parkway. So this is the general area where this preliminary plat is located. And then just a quick reminder of the plat itself. So this plat was unanimously approved by you guys on July 8th of last year. So preliminary plat approvals are effective for 1 year. So this plat will expire after July 8th of this year if a 1-year extension is not approved tonight. Right now the developer is working to obtain approved construction plans, and we'll proceed with the final plat submission once those are obtained. And as of right now, they have been submitted to the city for review. So we are getting close on those.
Questions for staff?
So staff does recommend approval of this preliminary plat extension for Rye Hill Section 5, and yeah, we can take those comments or questions if y'all have them at this time.
I jumped the gun. My apologies.
No.
Now, does anyone have questions for staff? I'll make a motion to approve the Rye Hill Section 5 preliminary plat extension. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I've got a second from Commissioner Brown. Any further discussion? Please vote. I have to turn around to see the vote. All right, that passes 5-0.
Awesome.
Thank you,
guys.
Ethan. Thank you, Commissioners. Item 6A, workshop. Review of and discussion on changes to the Lake Point redevelopment LPR zoning district. Jessica Rodriguez, Assistant Director of Planning and Development Services. Good evening, Jessica. How are you?
Good evening, Commissioners. I am good. Thank you for asking. Tonight, we're going to look at the workshop for the Lake Point Redevelopment Code and an amendment. So far, we have been working with the developer through the first phase of the Lake Point Green development, and that has brought some opportunities and some challenges before us. Mostly from preserving the existing tree landscape, reuse of existing buildings, the street and Mu intersections, maintaining that density throughout the development despite constraints for the utility easements, and utilizing that existing driveway network to be reconstructed to streets. So tonight, we're going to go through the amendments for the Lake Point Code with you item by item in the workshop. And then from there, we're going to ask for some feedback and if you have any discussion, and then the next steps after that. So a little bit of history on the Lake Point Redevelopment Code. It was created in December of 2023. It mostly encompasses what was formerly the Floor campus of 52 acres. There are 2 other pieces of small acreage properties that also have the LPR district with it. Redevelopment concept plan was approved in May of 2025. In that redevelopment concept plan, we have urban homes, townhomes, multifamily, and some flex space for commercial. Leverett is the owner and the developer of the 52 acres for Lake Point Green. Lake Point is a key redevelopment site that has been identified for years with the city council, which in turn relates to the city's the strategic action plan of fostering sensitive redevelopment, again as a priority, with Lake Point being named in that action plan. Because of that, staff is initiating an amendment to the code to support thoughtful and redevelopment of this site. We've had some amendments prior to the creation in December of 2023. The first amendment to the code was in May of 2025, also when the redevelopment concept plan was approved. That amendment focused on aligning the zoning regulations with some of the regulations that are in the subdivision chapter of the development code. November 2025, amendments were brought to you to look at things such as the widths of the Mus by bringing them maybe from 30 feet to 20 feet, and then also looking at some flexibility for setbacks with middle housing were 2 of the bigger objectives in that. And now we're here in June 2026 to workshop the amendments before you. I'm going to go into 4 different sections of what we're looking at for proposals. That first section is section 2-118, which are the district regulations. In there, we want to actually use the defined term for a corner lot when we're measuring that maximum lot width for urban homes. And then also clarifying the measurement distance for existing buildings in a non-residential capacity. So rather than measuring from a public realm, a proposal to measure from a property line. In section 2-119, we look at the lot layout and the site design. This is where we talk about the pedestrian realm and all the requirements set forth in there, and then providing some relief to those standards where we have an existing building. Section 2-121 is building design and additional development standards. This is where all the standards are housed for the non-residential development in the district, where it looks at 360-degree architecture, storefront transparency, siting, building site on their entrances to the property. We are proposing that if you've got an existing building, that you would it wouldn't be included in these requirements unless there was a substantial improvement to the said existing building. Which now brings us into section 10-3, which are the definitions, and adding a definition for substantial improvement. The development code hasn't had a definition for substantial improvement in its existence. So because of the standards that are being proposed in section 2-121, we're adding one. And then revising the definition for the corner lot in regards to Mus and streets. I'm going to get into more detail in the following slides what that means. The first item I'd like to talk about is the pedestrian realm. There's a graphic here over on the right-hand side of your screen. The pedestrian realm is composed of two items. It's composed of a clear zone, which is your walking path and your sidewalk for the pedestrians, and then what is a pedestrian enhancement zone. That pedestrian enhancement zone is what has your street trees, street furniture, and such. The pedestrian enhancement zone has variable widths depending on its adjacency to middle housing or to non-residential. And it's also according to the street type, which I'll get into. What the pedestrian realm doesn't account for is when it's next to an existing building and what that placement looks like. This chart shows the type 1 and the type 2 streets. The type 1 street, there's only going to be one type 1 street that's within this zoning district, and that's Creek Bend Drive, which is major collector, minor collector of that type 1, where you're looking at a clear zone of 8 feet in width and a pedestrian enhancement zone of 8 feet in width for a total of 16. A type 2 is going to be any other local street that's going to be throughout the development, as well as primary access easements, and that clear zone width being 10 feet, and then the pedestrian enhancement zone being 8 feet in width, where we have a combined total of 18 feet. In the pedestrian realm, there are some limited reductions for the clear zone, and as we mentioned, the clear zone is that pedestrian space that we walk through, particularly in the non-residential portion of it, where we've got uniqueness of maybe outdoor dining or other pedestrian amenities. So it allows within that clear zone that you can have some of these obstructions for a certain amount of distance. But at all times, you have to maintain a 5-foot unobstructed path for the pedestrians. The pedestrian enhancement zone, just think of it as like the pretty part of everything. This is where we have the shade trees or the shade structures such as canopies and awnings, your pedestrian scaled lighting. When we look at the pedestrian enhancement zone, there are some additional regulations when we look at non-residential components. And with that, there's a table in the development code, table 2-120.1, that talks about the public amenities and spaces that you have to have of a total of 8 points for your site in order to fulfill those requirements for the pedestrian enhancement zone. That's your enhanced landscaping, it's trash bins, it's public art, wall treatment, seatings. It's a whole realm of things that we have in there. The proposed amendment that we're asking is that where we have a pedestrian realm requirement and it's adjacent to an existing building, that they are not required to have that pedestrian realm, but only when the opposite side of the street has that pedestrian realm. And I'll show you some examples coming up. This is the existing site with the floor parking garage that's here. This is a future site for multifamily that's identified through the redevelopment concept plan. And this is a section for the middle housing, an existing driveway that was used by the floor campus that will be reconstructed into a street with access from here and access from here. This is what it looks like on the street level, where we can see that the existing pavement will be reconstructed to road standards. And then here we've got the existing parking garage and about approximate 10 feet in width of where we have the trees. And then we have trees on this side. With this only being 10 feet in width right here from the existing parking garage, you can see how there's no space to have the 8-foot clear zone that would be required for the pedestrians unless this whole roadway system is moved over. By moving that whole roadway system over, we would lose the canopy of trees on this side. With having the amendment that we don't require the public realm here, we're able to preserve the tree canopy on both sides of the network. And this is an illustration of what that looks like, of the parking garage, the existing trees, the 10 feet in spaces, what they've gotten. And this also showing here how we're going to preserve the pedestrian realm on the middle housing side. So this would be your middle housing side. The next amendment that we're looking at are the non-residential setbacks. The proposal is that we would not have a pedestrian realm next to an existing building under certain circumstances. The current regulations require you to measure that building setback from the back of the pedestrian realm. If there's no back of a pedestrian realm, we now need a new place to measure. So the proposal is that you would measure that from the property line for the existing building. The next amendment is for the non-residential building standards. This is where we talked about before, where we've got the 360-degree architecture, transparency, building siding, special regulations about where building entrances should be. This section doesn't preclude existing buildings from meeting these requirements. So we've done an examination, and if their existing building were to have a substantial improvement, then these regulations would apply. Hence the definition that we have come up with for substantial improvement. There's only one building that is on the site throughout the entirety of the Lake Point redevelopment district and also within the Floor campus, and that's going to stay on the site, and that's the parking garage. You can see from this aerial photograph that we already have the demolition, if you've been to a site that's there, and then this is the Pearl that's being constructed right now, and this is the parking garage as it exists right now. So it would be the only existing building that's left in the zoning district. The next amendment is for the middle housing and how we measure those lot widths from the corner lots. Currently, corner lots are defined as a lot that has an intersection of two streets. It doesn't contemplate a street in a mu. The development code defines mu as requiring frontage on a public street with pedestrian access from adjoining lots. So picture coming out of the front of your home on a mu and connecting to a sidewalk, and that sidewalk has another sidewalk within the mu, and from that mu you can go from one street to the other. So what the Lake Point Redevelopment District does with the MUs is it functions as a key pedestrian corridor to get you throughout the development. So it serves a similar role to a street because you've got that pedestrian access that can take you through the development or outside to the development as another means of mode of transportation, I would say. So with that, we have proposed to revise the corner lot definition to also include the intersection of a mu and a street. You may ask, what does this get us? This allows the maximum setback to now be 50 feet. The minimum setback without a corner lot is 40 feet of max setback. I'm sorry, lot width. Apologize, not setback. This would allow it to be 50, so it provides an extra 10 feet. This is a plat, proposed plat that hasn't been brought to you yet for consumption, but it essentially shows you some snippets of Shady Brook Lane and then also Lazy Lane. These are the MUs that are through the proposed section, and you can see this is a lot here and how that lot and that MU are functioning like the street would with the two intersections here. The idea is to treat those the same because of how the district functions. These are some examples of MUs and streets in Tall Fair. While maybe not quite the same regulation, you get the same feel for, you've got this MU with the houses that open up to the doors with a sidewalk that connects to a sidewalk that takes you through the MU and then out towards a street. In the case of the Lake Point Lake Point Green, what you would have is coming from this MU, traversing another green, and then connecting up with another MU through the radial pattern of the development where you can go through the development or to and through the development. The next amendment are the definitions. That is revising the corner lot definition so we can add street and mu to it, and then adding the substantial improvement definition. That definition is saying that an addition, expansion, or reconstruction or redevelopment of an existing building can be done. It is not considered a substantial improvement unless it increases more than 50% of the gross area or 50% of the improvement based upon the appraised value of the county's central appraisal district. What a substantial improvement does not include is any routine maintenance, interior innovations, facade improvements, and any code work compliance that an existing building could possibly have. Those are a summary of the proposed amendments, with the pedestrian realm providing that flexibility where the site has some constraints. Recognizing that we need a new measurement standard for the existing buildings, with the setbacks being measured from the property line rather than the back of the pedestrian realm. A substantial improvement definition and substantial improvement regulation as it applies to the development standards for the buildings. And then revising the corner lot definition to include Muse, so we have a site that's just better aligned with like the circulation that we see throughout other parts of the city. Some points that we would like the commission to consider is that change to the pedestrian realm will require requirements provides flexibility to address the existing parking garage and maintain walkability objectives within that district, which is the intent. Provides relief from the building design standards to allow flexibility for reuse of the existing parking garage building. An addition of the corner lot definition gives flexibility for that lot configuration and still supports the intended development pattern. And overall, the proposed changes support the city's redevelopment goals, and this being a priority site, Lake Point, and then tying that with the strategic action plan and those redevelopment priorities for the city. The next steps, so tonight we will have some discussion and some feedback from the commission. After that point, we would come back to you with any incorporated changes, if any, to have a public hearing and consideration and action, and then followed by city council public hearing and action. And with that, if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions for staff?
I've got some.
Mary, go ahead.
So, thanks, Jessica. So I'm looking at the changes that you're proposing, and in the changing of the way the building setback is measured, that's going to be across the board, right? I mean, this is not something for an existing building. You're talking about this being different now for everything that's developed in Lake Point?
Is this for the corner lot definition or for the measurement for the existing building and the non-residential?
Well, the existing building setback. So are we only then talking about the parking garage? I'm trying to
Yes,
sort of
ma'am.
clarify in my mind why you're doing this change.
It's the only existing building that will remain, and it will be the only existing building within this development, but also in the Lake Point redevelopment district itself, the zoning district.
But then we added the substantial improvement, and we're not really improving the parking garage, correct?
No, ma'am. When we looked at it, we wanted to ensure that, when something came down the road, that we were getting ahead of any potential issues we could have with an existing building. Just trying to be thoughtful. So we looked through the rest of the regulations to see if there were any points of contention because of it. So the thought is that, the building, is going to be reused, the parking garage, and that's great, but I can't tell the future, 20 years from now. So if there was a substantial improvement to it, we would want it to come into compliance with those development standards for the district.
But then wouldn't this be considered a change? Because basically we're having substantial development, substantial change across Lake Point. So then this would come into existence for everything that's being developed now.
It only applies to the building, to a building.
That already exists.
Yes, ma'am, an existing building.
So wouldn't it be simpler to just write requirements around the parking garage?
I don't know what the future holds. So that's why I'm not trying to think of it as like here and now today, although we have those like constraints, but it's the idea of trying to set up the zoning district for the best success for the future when I'm not here anymore, after I'm retired.
Yeah, but then what you do though, if you have say they knock down a townhouse for whatever reason, say it burns down, and then they have to rebuild it, that would be considered substantial improvement.
Well, the building wouldn't be existing anymore. We have nonconformity regulations that could deal with that for like a fire or natural disaster. The substantial improvement comes into play when you or whomever as the developer is taking that action to do it, because we have other regulations that if it's acts of God, etc.
But in general, what's going to be developed in this area is pretty much the different types of housing, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We're not really going to have any other buildings other than this parking garage.
Non-residential, non-residential also incorporates commercial, it incorporates multifamily. So it's only the middle housing that's not considered non-residential.
What I'm trying to get at is if one building because it seems like it's mostly residential in this entire area, one building for however, it has substantial improvement, then it's going to be handled differently than the rest of the development that's been done around the setback. Is that correct?
Only, I could probably look at that. I don't recall off the top of my head. I see what you're saying. If they're in the event that this comes up in the future and there is a pedestrian realm, I see the error. Yes, ma'am. I think if I may, I think the conversation is like if you have an existing building and then that existing building goes away, I guess if you would use.
It can't go away. What you're telling me, it can't go away, but somehow it has substantial improvement because what I'm hearing in Lake Point, what's being planned is it's a residential area. There's not really going to be any commercial buildings. We've got this one building, which isn't really a building, it's a parking garage. Then it sounds like these changes are coming into play because the requirements don't fit what we want to do around the parking garage. And what we may be setting ourselves up here is for or a group, say, if there's a group of townhouses that have substantial improvement, being handled differently in the setback for the pedestrians.
Sorry, I am totally following you now. That section only applies to non-residential. It doesn't apply to the middle housing for an existing building.
Yeah, so then I get back, why don't we just do something for the parking garage? Because there shouldn't be any, to my knowledge, there's not any planned commercial for this area.
There could be, I don't know what the future holds.
Well, I understand, but I guess it's just, it almost seems like it's backing us into a hole too. I don't know, I'll wait for the other commissioners to ask questions, but.
I'd like to just, if I may, I don't know if this will be helpful, but so anything else that is built here will conform to the regulations. This is saying that if for whatever reason in the future this particular parking garage does undergo some type of substantial improvement, which we've defined, then it would trigger the requirements that are right now it would be exempted from.
But isn't that tied to the word existing? When does existing begin to exist, right? Because you could have the discussion that 5 years from now something could be existing even though it was built before. It's still, I think you need to memorialize that somehow.
We could maybe define that better, but also anything else will be already conforming to the regulations because it is being constructed newly. So, but we can look at better defining that we're talking about the thing that didn't get torn down from the previous existing use on the site and maybe pinpoint that better.
I'd have to read it again, but maybe make sure commercial's in there, because I know that was confusing me somewhere, so I may have missed that. just to make sure that that's in there.
Benefit of having.
I follow the line of logic, and we will take a look at that we are accomplishing what we are trying to accomplish instead of an unintended consequence.
I'm just going to go back. I think tying it to the existing structure and forming this around the parking garage is probably the shortcut that needs to be taken. I have a question regarding the pedestrian realm. So it's a pretty simple one, but as you're approaching that area, if you happen to be on that side of the street where there's not going to be access and there's going to be proper crosswalks, they're going to be lighted, what are we doing there is we're causing pedestrians to have to go around and into the street. I just want to make sure there's a plan for that.
I know through discussion, so you're saying that maybe having like a crossing, here, or not to walk here or not walk to here?
Just if you're going to push people to the other side on that street, are you doing something at that point where you're not going to have the walk area and you're forcing them to the other side of the road, right?
There will be other connection points, I believe, when we get to this point right here, where you'll be able to walk across.
I just want to make sure it's baked into the plan, is what I'm saying, is you've got to have access, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you've answered my question on substantial, so I think I'm good. Thank you.
Commissioner Patel, questions?
First, I'll just reiterate, I think tying it down to the existing structure and calling it the parking garage would clear up a lot of issues, because I wasn't here for the previous sessions, and one of my first questions was, well, how many existing buildings are there on the site? And somebody that's not familiar with this is going to ask that same question. And so when you're saying I'm not here, they're going to say, like, well, what was here? The existing parking garage. Is the existing floor parking garage solely for the future multifamily site?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so access probably is not an issue coming from the other side, right? So that's why it works not to have a sidewalk on that one side, right? But again, if we just say it's for that area only, you remove any vagueness in the future of change.
I apologize. It wasn't meant to be vague. It was meant to try to be open
Sure,
to
sure.
the future. But I understand the logic and what y'all are saying back to me. So.
And so, God forbid, but substantial improvement, this area could flood, and you could have substantial improvement without the building being lost. So that also brings a problem with existing structures and that definition. It's tied to the same flood insurance program. Your definition is very close to the flood insurance program definition of substantial improvement, 50% of the value. I don't know how you're going to determine the value of the parking garage at this point, but that's, and I don't even know if it's a building or if it's just a structure, but.
It meets the definition of a building, yes,
okay.
sir.
Okay. I think that was all I had.
I'll come back if you have
Yeah.
questions. Commissioner Tilton, any questions for staff?
No questions for me.
Okay, so just for me, can you put up the summary slide that shows the 4 things that you're proposing? And by the way, while you're looking for that, I think this whole process shows the benefit of bringing stuff to us and workshopping it before it comes for consideration of action. So thank you for doing that. I think that's super helpful.
Thank you.
And I think in the long run, it'll be super helpful for everyone. So again, for me personally, I was here for all that, and I have the same exact question, which is, okay, we're talking about one building, right? There's only going to be one existing building, and it's the parking garage. So I don't know why you wouldn't make a regulation specific for that building rather than leaving it generic. I mean, I understand, and I take the point that everything else is going to be new. If it's new, it's going to comply. And so if you have to redo that, well, you're redoing something that's already complies with the rest of it. I get that. I still think it's easier to just close the door on that and say, we're talking about the parking garage. So let's just be specific. We're talking about the parking garage. And I think I heard you say it's still gonna be used for parking, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's all fine. Now, with substantial improvement, here's my only thought on that. I don't have a problem with it definitionally, except that when we're talking about the parking garage, all right, if the ordinance is gonna say, if you don't substantially improve the parking garage, you don't have to bring it into compliance with the rest of the district regulations, right? So I'm just thinking about what is the impact of that over time. So over time, because what you're then encouraging is just touch-up work on the garage. And someone's gonna go, well, if I have to do anything major to it, it's gonna have to comply. So I would like staff to consider whether or not that creates a disincentive to modernize or upkeep the garage. Because it seems to me that you're inviting nickel and diming on it and not anything that's more substantial. So it can stay the way it stays and it doesn't have to comply. And I would just point out that my reading of the code says that, you know, it applies to existing buildings without a carve out. So just think about that. Because there's a reason that this was passed and it was intended to apply to existing buildings. And now we're leaving one. And I get it. It's a parking garage. It's going to stay a parking garage. It's going to serve the multifamily. I don't really have philosophical problem with any of that. But if we are going to think about the future, I would ask you just to think about that. And then for me, I have no concerns about clarifying the measurement method for the setbacks, nor with the corner lots used either. For me personally, no concerns with any of that. So those are the only two things that I would add to the discussion of the existing building and substantial improvement. Based on that, any other feedback for staff?
Just in support of that, again,
Go
I'm
for
going to go back to reference the flood insurance program, and that's exactly how they get around substantial improvement. They do it, okay, well, I'm doing 40% now, and then later I'll do another 40%. Well, now I'm at 80%, and that's how so unless you say, add the word cumulative improvements, which would encompass all of the improvements at one point, then they're not going to work around substantially improving, and that's just a flood insurance thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've actually seen the same thing on the gross square footage of incremental, and when you start adding them all up, it's a substantial improvement. I thank you. I appreciate this feedback. This was really good feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, and go ahead.
For clarity though, when this very first one, when we're providing, and it's the flexibility for existing buildings, you are talking about changing how the pedestrian realm is measured, correct? It's not the same as the way it is currently.
Right now, the setback would have to be measured. Right now, the way the code reads, it's measured from the back of the pedestrian realm. But if there's no pedestrian realm requirement, we have to have a way to have a setback that's measurable. And the setbacks are a minimum, not a minimum, they're a maximum. And so there's a range. I think it's like 0 and 20 is how it is. So if it's on the 0 or if it's 3 feet, it's acceptable.
Okay, so it would just go back then to reference this if we do this change, and it would be just specific to the parking garage.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
And we can carve it out just like y'all have suggested.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, last call for feedback. Okay, thank you very much. Hope that gives you all the direction you're looking for. Item 7, reports. A, Planning and Zoning Commission Liaison Report from the June 16th City Council meeting. Mary, did you have that?
Nothing to report.
Okay. B, City Staff Report.
Good evening. So your next meeting will be July 9th. We know we will have at least 2 plats on that agenda, and we're preparing other items as well. So we hope to see you all then.
July 9th?
July 9th. Thursday, July 9th, 6 p.m. Celebration of, I'm not sure which one. Sorry.
I do not know. I can't
We can talk
answer that.
after if there's something that you
Okay.
mind.
Anything else? Got a motion to adjourn by Commissioner Brown.
Second.
That's seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Aye. That passes. We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.